Hi, it's Geoff Chalmers here from discoverdouble-bass.com. Now that is the home of online video double bass lessons and courses. We've also got interviews, gear reviews. There's a whole load of stuff over there. So if you're a double bass player, please visit our website. I'm sure that you'll love it. Now I'm really excited because today I'm joined by a brand new tutor to the website, and he is a professor of music from the University of Southern Mississippi. He's also a celebrated author of a series of books called the Tao of Bass. Just a hand here, and he is an amazing virtuoso double bassist. He's been over in the UK filming a series of lessons on left-hand technique, and we thought that we'd have a bit of a discussion about it and the use of playing with all four fingers, so using the third finger in the lower position. So let's welcome Dr. Marcos Machado. Welcome, great to have you here, Marcos.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, tell us about your book that I'm holding here, Volume 1. You obviously really excited about left-hand technique. So, yeah, how did you get involved in this? How did it come about?
Well, this book is a result of many years, I would say, more than 20 years of research, experimentation, and trying different approaches for double bass. It's not Volume 1 deals with left hand, but Volume 3 will be only the bow. And I'm very happy. The book is being very well received. I sold the book in more than 40 countries. It's already in its 5th printing. Wow. So I'm very proud of this work, and it's a result of years and years of research.
Absolutely. I mean, I bought a copy of this, which is how we. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It's yeah, it was really cool, and there's a huge amount of material in here. And of course, with Marcos being a real expert in left-hand technique, I wanted to ask him a few questions about it, and particularly this use of the third finger in lower positions, because this seems to be one of the really contentious issues in double bass playing. It seems to be French v German bow, dots on the fingerboard, and anything to do with the third finger, they blow people's minds. So what are your thoughts? I mean, how do you approach things? Are you a 1, 2, 4 Samandel guy, or do you kind of do a bit more? Why don't you tell us about your approach?
Well, I never liked the national approach. The following, I play German school because I'm German, I play French school because I'm French. I have a tendency to see what works better, what's more natural. Third finger is very popular in Italy. They use a lot, right? The finger rather than the traditional one. Okay, so I'm very comfortable with 2 in low positions, with 3 in low positions, and I'm a true believer that each finger should be treated equally. They should be equally strong, equally independent. I always show a trio exercise where I can demonstrate that you should be able to trio with any finger equally, with easy and relax, such as
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm an advocate of all fingers, but in a relaxed manner.
So, and this is including the lower positions, because I think I tend to fall into, I guess a lot of players are like me, where we tend to be Samandel, 1, 2, 4, let's say that, in the lower positions, and then perhaps include the third finger somewhere around the neck heel potentially, yes. Yeah. And from then onwards, it's just thumb position. I tend to be fairly standard with my Petrarchi-based approach, Sure. But for you, are you really using the third finger when you're playing, say, excerpts, and
yes.
Have you repertoire in the lower register too?
Yes, I use all the time. For example, if I'm playing, let me show you this in a scale, so it's very easy for people to see that. If I'm playing a C major scale, I will use a third finger for that leading tone. Okay, but if I'm playing a dominant scale where I have the flat 7, I will use second for sure. Okay, so I interchange a lot between second and finger, whatever is more comfortable, what is near to my first finger or to the finger I'm going to. If I'm going to the 4th finger and I have a leading tone, I have a tendency to use 3. If I'm going to a first finger and I have a half step, I have a tendency to use 2. So they are interchangeable. I use them all the time equally.
Do you find there are downsides of using the third finger? Because there are some things that it works so well. So, for instance, fourths, we were talking, or you were just
Yes.
demonstrating playing the fork technique where you're playing, fourths that way, which is, it feels very natural, but playing more chromatic passages or perhaps scales in one position feels more complex. I mean, for you, is it all just the same thing?
It's the same. I think
Yeah.
with proper training, it should feel the same. You should feel very comfortable playing, let's say, a chromatic passage. Or traditionally, essentially everything should sound the same, and then for musical reasons I might opt for second finger, third finger, but usually it's the music that it decides my fingerings. It's not cimando or belay or any of these traditional school. I respect all, I use it all. I've just kind of integrated everything together in my own way of playing the bass.
Maybe you could play some excerpts that demonstrate this, or some. We were playing the Mahler solo
Yes.
earlier. Or
Yeah, the
something.
Mahler solo is a classic example that I will use three because of this relation, whole step, half step.
Yeah.
And it's very natural. I always tell my students, if you measure the double bass here, it's the same size as a cello, and they are gonna use fingers, different fingers for each half step. So
Yeah.
something like the Mahler, I would play 1, 3, 4, perhaps. But I'm comfortable too with 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 3. And so forth. Okay, I'm basing my choices on relaxation and how the line sounds.
It's a really interesting approach, because you do have such a wider range of options, and in terms of phrasing and developing your musicality and original voice and avoiding awkward shifts that maybe put the accent in a strange place. That's definitely something that seems really powerful.
That's a great point. Groupings, when you have all fingers at your disposal, you can phrase much more naturally, respecting the actual grouping of the passage,
Yes.
not fingering with a school-based fingering, but fingering very musically, following what the composer wrote.
This is really something that you're using all the time in orchestra as well as for solo playing. Then this isn't, you're able to respect the line that's been written and the
Yes.
phrasing that's been written, and it gives you some. You were playing Scheherazade earlier,
Yes.
and just hearing that with some interesting.
That's a classic example where
Yeah.
that's a great example, because on that excerpt I actually interchange
Yes.
in a small excerpt 2 and 3. I can
Yeah.
demonstrate that a little bit. So what I'm doing here, I'm ascending with the third finger, descending with second. So this is a classic example of how both techniques, they coexist.
One of the key components then of utilizing the third finger seems to me, or certainly using all four fingers, is the use of the pivot. And I know that you studied with Francois Rabat, so I'm wondering whether you can speak a little bit about whether the pivot was something you learnt directly from Francois, or was something that you already were exploring before. How did that come about?
Well, I was very lucky to study with Milton Maciadre Sr. This is a bass player from Brazil who was a former principal double bass with Porto Alegre Symphony Orchestra. And on my first lesson, he actually showed me the possibilities of pivots and shifts. And he also told me about Francois Rabat. So when I started, I already had that name and that image. And I was very lucky when I moved to the United States in 1995 to study with Maciadre's son, who is also called Milton Maciadre, in Georgia. That year, Rabat was a guest there. So immediately I connected with Francois, and I started a long relationship with him. We're very close. And of course, he showed me many things that opened my mind. And I took his concept, absorbed it, learned it, but I made it my own interpretation of it. And what I did, I added the third finger on his technique. He uses mainly pivots 1, 2, 4, and I use pivot 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, he seems to have had such an impact on the world of the double bass that's really, you know, he's sort of got this ball rolling, and everybody like yourself is kind of jumping on it and doing different things. Yeah. So would you say that you're, do you teach Rabath technique then? Or do you think that when you're teaching your students, you're teaching many different areas of techniques? It doesn't seem to be quite as one way. You know, a lot of people, what I'm getting at is I tend to speak to people who are, you know, either Rabath v Samandal. It's one or the other, and you know, there is no kind of area in the middle.
I think they coexist. If you look at Rabath, the first volume is very Simandal-like. It's just a very melodic Simandal. I would put this way. His volume 1 is beautiful, but it all based in 1, 2, 4 technique. I think people forget that sometimes. There is a core, what I call a core technique, and then depending on the student, I can use 1, 2, 4 or 1, 3, 4 as the departure technique, because I have some students who are trained in the Italian school. Then they use 1, 3, 4. So we started from that, but gradually I start showing other possibilities. So I don't teach with only one book. Of course I use the Rabath book, I use my own book, but I use many other books. I use Nani books, Billet, Simandal, Hertel, all these. I think all this is great. We have all this material at our disposal. You know, it would be a shame not to use all this, because all those guys were dedicated. They dedicated their whole lives to the art of double bass playing. So I think we should look with care and love these old schools, old methods. That's what I do.
Well, I think that's a fantastic place to finish here, Marcos. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you today, and it's been a real joy to hear you play. It really has. We've been having a lot of fun filming here in Leeds, and it's been a really great experience. And of course, thank you so much for watching at home, for checking out the video. And if you'd like to see more from Marcos, he's filmed a full-length course that will be available on Discover Double Bass, all about left-hand technique. And I'm sure we'll be releasing some videos to share with you. And hopefully, we've given you some ideas and take you further on your journey with the double bass, and perhaps in a new direction too. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.